Hey guys, tonight we drift back into a world where being clean made you suspicious. Cats were hunted as spies, and medicine involved mouse ash and golden pea. You're stepping into medieval Europe, where the daily routine could kill you, or worse, embarrass you. Imagine waking up in a drafty stone room, shivering, and being told that if you bathe too often, demons might seep into your pores. Hygiene, that's for witches and gasp, prostitutes. You might not survive this journey with your sanity intact, so before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're walking through a narrow alley in a medieval town. It reeks of tanneries and chamber pots emptied from second-story windows. And you? You're coated in sweat and dust, but locals eye you warily because only someone with something to hide would want to wash that off. You learn quickly bathing is basically taboo. The thinking is that scrubbing your skin opens your pores, and through those invisible holes, diseases sneak in like tiny devils. Some people believe that each drop of warm water tempts your body to let it inside. That I in some towns, it said the only people who bathe regularly are prostitutes. So if you're squeaky clean, well, what are you trying to advertise exactly? Nobles might dab a perfumed rag to their faces and call it a day. The public bathhouses gradually close down, not because of dirt, but because too much nudity apparently invites moral collapse. You haven't even finished adjusting to this new definition of clean when someone's caught stealing bread. There's no CCTV or fingerprints here. Instead, the village gathers for a trial, not in a courtroom, but in the center square by the fire pit. The accused is ordered to dip a hand into boiling water. Everyone watches. The priest prays. You stare in horror. The thief yelps and yanks their arm out, red and blistering. Now you wait in 3 days. If the burns start healing cleanly, they'll be declared innocent. If the wounds fester, well, clearly, guilt runs through their veins. Another method? Carrying a red hot iron bar for a few paces. If your palm holds steady and the gods show mercy, you walk free. If not, you probably deserve that branding anyway. Justice is very literal here and kind of fire themed. You turn to find someone offering you a sniff of a leather pouch. Inside, human poop. Because guess what? That's how doctors diagnose illness now. Smell, texture, even taste. Every detail of your precious stool could mean the difference between you'll be fine and prepare for trepanation. Some physicians keep jars of it labeled by day, like a very cursed calendar. And if you're lucky, you might avoid the most drastic cure, having a hole drilled into your skull. Yes, trepanation is very real. You got a headache? Or worse, an epileptic fit? They say demons live in your head, and they need an exit. So they drill, gently, relatively, until the pressure's off. Some survive, some don't. And strangely, some holes show signs of healing, meaning people live for years afterward, possibly with a whistle when the wind hit just right. But you're not out of the woods. As you wander deeper into this odd world, a shadow darts by. A cat, black as night. People gasp. Children scream. Someone hurls a rock. You try to stop them, but a local explains. That cat might be a witch's familiar, or worse, a witch herself. Killing it could save the town. So they do, again and again. Cats are massacred across the land in righteous fear. Rat populations explode. Fleas jump hosts. The Black Death spreads like karma in the form of plague. And fashion? Oh! Don't think the nobles are spared ridicule. They strut around in shoes so pointy they have to tie the tips to their knees to keep from tripping. Hats stack higher than your average toddler. If insecurity were fabric, they'd be draped in it. You spot a gentleman with shoes nearly 2 feet long. He walks like a marionette being controlled by someone drunk. You don't laugh, because these are status symbols. The longer the shoe, the higher the rank. Tripping is just the price of fame. And through all of this, the people sleep strangely. They don't knock out for 8 hours straight. Instead, they nap after sunset, then wake up around midnight. The streets get weirdly lively. People pray, Think, visit neighbors, or make love in whispered tones before curling back into their straw beds for second sleep. It's like life has an intermission. You're dozing off when someone nudges you and whispers about a woman nearby who might be hiding something dangerous. Beneath the waist, some men whisper about vagina dentata, the terrified belief that women might have teeth down there. You try not to snort, but for some it's a real fear. Entire treatises are written on how to disarm the danger. It's medical paranoia meets sexual anxiety, and women, they probably roll their eyes and enjoy the extra personal space. Back in the apothecary's corner, elixirs promise immortality. Some sparkle with ground gold. Others stink faintly of something worse. Virgin's urine, the seller whispers. A sacred cure. You back away slowly. Vitamins never look so good. But your curiosity isn't done. A whisper runs through town. A woman is to be tried as a witch. The test? Tossed into a lake. If she floats, she's guilty, buoyed by Satan's grace. If she sinks, she's innocent, but probably not breathing. It's the kind of test where no one wins, except maybe the lake, which now hosts 100 years worth of trauma. You seek comfort in something simple, a salad maybe, but cucumbers are avoided like the plague. People believe they soak up evil from the ground. Eating one is like biting into sin. Best to stick with bread and boiled cabbage. And if your teeth ache from that meager meal, easy fix. Burn a mouse. Crush its remains into ash. Rub it on your gums. This is supposed to drive out the toothworm. Yes, that's what they think causes pain. A literal worm burrowing in your molar. You kind of miss dentist now for your stomach ache? The gravedigger offers a bottle of skull water. Collected from the cavity of a decaying skull, it's supposed to cure epilepsy and all manner of ailments. You don't ask how it's brewed. You just nod politely and pretend to sip, and all the while, the church watches. Not just your prayers, but your bed sheets. Sex is banned on Wednesdays, Fridays, Sundays, and before and after holy days. That leaves maybe 3 Tuesdays a year? Good luck scheduling romance. Then, just as you think it can't get more bizarre, a commotion erupts in the market square. A pig is on trial. It bit a child. The judge wears robes. Witnesses are called. The pig is sentenced and publicly executed. You stare in disbelief, and someone murmurs, "Justice must be done." Even the animals aren't safe. You rub your eyes. The wind carries the scent of herbs, iron, and decay. Somewhere a bell tolls. Tomorrow, someone might be healed with gold dust, or mouse ash, or skull water. But tonight, you lay back in a straw, trying not to breathe through your nose, wondering if maybe, just maybe, that cucumber wasn't the safest dinner choice after all. Section 2. Trial by boiling water or red hot iron you wake with the sound of hooves clattering against cobblestones, and for a moment you forget where or when you are. The cold morning mist snakes around your ankles as you shuffle toward the town center, drawn by murmurs of another trial. But this time it's not a pig. It's a rooster. Apparently it laid an egg, which, according to local logic, means it's in league with the devil. Because everyone knows only hens lay eggs, unless dark forces are at play. So they try it, sentence it, and yes, execute it. All before breakfast. You barely manage to bite a black bread before your guide for the day, a chatty monk with more teeth than sense, starts spouting off about natural cures. He hands you a sachet of dried herbs and a jawbone. Human, supposedly, if you sleep with it under your pillow. It wards off bad dreams. You politely tuck it in your pocket and try not to think about where he got it. As you pass the apothecary again, a man bursts out holding what looks like a greasy rag. He's had a revelation, an all purpose cure made from distilled mummy powder. Yes, mummy. European physicians are importing ground up remains from Egyptian tombs, believing that ancient bodies hold medicinal power. The richer the corpse's history, the more effective the cure. You stare at a jar of what looks like old cinnamon and realize someone might have paid a fortune for what's basically cursed dust. Inside the church, someone's whispering about sin again. This time, the target is music. Too many notes, they say, can tempt a soul toward chaos. Instruments like the lute or drum are eyed with suspicion. But chant? Chant is holy. Monks drone for hours in echoing halls. their voices weaving like incense through the air. You almost nod off, not from boredom, but from the strange, lulling piece of their rhythm. For once, this medieval oddity feels soothing that, of course, not everything is so peaceful. You overhear a noble discussing his new tapestry. It depicts heaven above, hell below, and in between, a man with his entrails being yanked out by demons with spoons. You cough. The noble beams, proud of the realism. He gestures to the sky and says, Art inspires the soul to righteousness. You nod, still haunted by the spoon detail. Back on the street, a woman hawks talismans, shiny bits of bone, nails from supposed saints, and a toenail she claims belonged to St. Cuthbert. People believe these relics can protect them from plague, infertility, even bad weather. One man rubs a dried thumb for luck before buying chicken. You consider asking if Street Cuthbert will be okay with his remains hanging from a belt, but think better of it. Further along, you spot a man painting the walls of a chapel. But instead of saint or angels, he's illustrating sins giant, grotesque creatures with heads for stomachs and legs made of serpents. It's fear based advertising, 14th century style. Kids walk by and shudder. Parents nod approvingly. Nothing like a little nightmare fuel to keep your soul on track. Suddenly, a bell rings and a crowd gathers. It's market day. But not just for goods, for indulgences. A papal envoy has arrived, selling forgiveness. For the right price, you can shave centuries off your time in purgatory. For a bit more, you can prepay forgiveness for sins you haven't committed yet. It's the medieval version of sin insurance. The crowd flocks to him, clutching coins and confessions. You hang back, wondering if medieval ethics come with a receipt. Later, you stroll past a field where an odd game is underway. Peasants are kicking around an inflated pig bladder, shrieking and chasing it through mud. The rules? Unclear. The enthusiasm? Alarming. A monk mutters that this is the root of chaos. But for now, it's just muddy fun. You almost join in until someone bites another player and yells for honor. Wiping grime from your face, you notice a small stone tower with a curious sign, Leech Keeper. You step inside and find rows of jars filled with fat, writhing leeches. The keeper, a woman with soot-streaked cheeks and the energy of a caffeinated owl, offers you a session. She explains that leeches balance your humors, especially black bile, blamed for everything from depression to indigestion. You decline, but she insists on gifting you a travel leech for emergencies. It blinks at you, probably today as dusk falls. The sky turns ash gray and the streets begin to clear. People hurry home, muttering about night spirits. Candles flicker behind wooden shutters. You follow your nose to a tavern where the air smells like roasted turnip and old beer. A bard sings a slow ballad about a knight who fell in love with a ghost. The room sighs. You sip from a wooden mug and pretend not to notice the mouse nibbling crumbs near your boot. In the corner. Two old men argue about what stars really are. One claims they're holes poked in the sky by God's chariot. The other insists they're the eyes of angels. A younger man joins them, whispering about a forbidden book, claiming the earth might not be flat. The old men laugh, then cross themselves for even hearing it. You smile, noting that history's wildest ideas always start as whispers. Back in your borrowed bed, straw stuffed, lumpy, and vaguely moldy, you listen to the night. Distant dogs bark. A bell tolls again. Somewhere, a woman sings a lullaby about bones dancing in the moonlight. It's eerie and lovely. You curl under the scratchy blanket, your travel leech in a jar by your side, and wonder how anyone survived this world with their sanity intact. But then you remember they didn't always. Some didn't even try. And somehow, that's comforting. Section 3. Doctors diagnose you by your poop the rooster crows again. Another day, another uncomfortable brush with medieval reality. You stretch, hit your head on a beam, and realize your bedroom is actually a loft above a stable. The horses snore more peacefully than you did. As you descend a rickety ladder, a barefoot boy offers you breakfast, boiled oats with single raisin. You thank him like he just brought you eggs Benedict. That today's gossip is grim. A man's been accused of speaking to wind, not in poetry, but in full-on, middle-of-the-road conversations. The local priest claims it's devil whispering, and the town agrees. They're already preparing the ducking stool. You make a mental note. No talking to Breeze. But it gets weirder. You wander into a gathering near the edge of town, where a group of flagellants is passing through. Barefoot, hooded, and chanting. They whip themselves in rhythm, hoping their pain will atone for the world's sins, and maybe stop the next plague. Blood trickles. Children stare. You do too, until someone tries to hand you a whip. You back away politely and pretend to be very, very busy. Inside the chapel, you overhear confession. The sin? Dancing. Not at court, mind you, but in the fields, alone, to no music, which in these parts, clearly demonic. The priest sighs and prescribes 3 Hail Marys and no more frolicking. Ever. Meanwhile, scholars are locked in heated debate over a new scandal rocking the world of herbal medicine. Someone tried to grow mandrake root without chanting the proper incantation. According to lore, pulling a mandrake from the ground without ceremony will cause it to scream and kill anyone who hears it. So people use dogs to yank out instead, hoping the poor animal survives. Some swear the roots resemble human figures. You glance at one, and it looks more like a lumpy potato. Still, better safe than sorry. You pass a field where peasants dig trenches, not for farming, but for burying shoes. Yes, shoes, buried beneath doorways or hearths to ward off witches. It's said that the scent of worn shoes confuses dark spirits, who become trapped sniffing around instead of possessing your children. You suddenly understand why medieval homes always smell like feet. Not far from there, you find a building filled with smoke and shouting, a barber surgeon's stall. The barber isn't just for haircuts. He's the closest thing to a doctor many people will see. Today's procedures? Bloodletting, tooth pulling, and minor amputations. You catch the end of a session involving a nose polyp and what looks like a fire poker. The patient leaves with a wad of herbs shoved up his nostril and a receipt in Latin. It's unclear whether he's cured or cursed. Lunch brings no comfort. The stew's gray, the bread's harder than your bedpost, and the ale tastes like someone dropped a penny in it. Twice. Still, it's better than nothing. A woman at your table boasts that she keeps demons away by hanging garlic from her braids. You nod, not entirely sure she's wrong. Across the room, someone mentions a king's touch. You perk up. Apparently, some monarchs claim the divine ability to heal diseases, especially scrofula, a nasty swelling of the lymph nodes. People line up for hours just to be touched by royal fingers. A sweaty noble nearby insists he once saw a man cured after a single pat on the shoulder. Then he coughs violently into your drink. You take that as your cue to leave. Wandering again, you find a school for boys. The teacher wears a robe, a belt of dried fish, and the expression of someone who's never had a nap. The lesson? Latin verbs, followed by moral discipline, which, in this case, involves whipping students who yawn. The boys recite phrases like, "Death is certain, time is fleeting," while sneaking glances at the window. You do too. It's somehow the darkest and funniest moment of your day. Outdoors, you stumble upon a woman selling plague charms. One is a frog in a little pouch. Another is a stone said to sweat when disease approaches. She also offers powder of sympathy to be sprinkled on the weapon that caused a wound, not the wound itself. Supposedly, the pain disappears by healing the instrument. You consider asking if this works for heartbreak, then decide maybe not. Be why late afternoon, the town crier starts his rounds. He yells the news while ringing a bell. Today's updates include a runaway goat, a banned book, and the upcoming execution of a man who claimed the moon was just a rock. The last bit earns a hiss in the crowd. I in the distance. Bells toll again. You realize they become a kind of constant, marking time, death, and divine services. The sound is both grounding and unnerving, like being trapped inside a metronome set to plague anxiety. You return to the stable loft. A cat curls at your feet, probably the only one left in town not accused of witchcraft. You scratch behind its ears and it purrs, unaware of its dangerous reputation. You fall asleep thinking about the trial earlier, the whipping pilgrims, the possessed shoes, and whether powdered mummy would actually taste like cinnamon toast. Somewhere below, a priest prays for protection, a woman buries garlic in her garden, and someone outside whispers to the wind, hoping no one hears. Section 4. Cats were killed for being witches' familiars. Morning comes slowly, the sky outside dim and heavy with fog. You sit up, brush straw from your hair, and instinctively reach for your travel leech. Still alive, barely, in its jar. As you stretch your limbs, the bells ring out again. But this time, they toll not for mass nor for death but for rain. A procession begins forming in the square. Villagers marching with relics, crosses, and a statue of the Virgin Mary on a creaky wooden cart. They're praying for the heavens to open. The crops are parched, the wells are low, and if the rain doesn't come soon, someone's goat is definitely getting blamed. You join the crowd, swept up in a chance. A woman beside you clutches a relic, so tightly her knuckles have gone white. She says it's a sliver of Noah's Arkansas. You don't ask how she got it. Everyone's a bit on edge. After all, if the rain doesn't come by sundown, they might need to encourage the skies with something more persuasive, like sacrificing a rooster. Or it two'd be why midday. The sky remains stubbornly dry, so attention shifts to another event, a relic pilgrimage. The town has secured the skull of St. Florian, or so they claim, and it's on display at the church for one day only. Pilgrims file past it reverently, some weeping, others pressing wax figurines to the skull, hoping for miracles. You hear murmurs that the saint once protected a village from fire by sneezing. Historians still debate whether it was a sneeze or the subsequent rainstorm that did the trick. You slip away before someone makes you kneel too long. Out in the fields, you notice a peculiar ritual, people banging pots and pans. Not for cooking, but to scare off storm devils said to block the rain. A man waves a wooden spoon like a sword and yells, "Be gone, sky fiends!" You duck out of the way, unsure whether you're witnessing meteorology or early performance art. Back in town, another kind of storm brews, political. The local lord is inspecting his lands, and the peasants line up to present him with offerings, a chicken, a sack of barley, a carved spoon. You notice one man trembling as he steps forward empty handed. His crops failed, his livestock died. The Lord frowns. There's a tense moment before the priest intervenes and offers to pray on it. The man is spared, for now, but his relief is fragile. Everyone knows prayers aren't always enough. You wander toward the outskirts, where something catches your eye, a gathering of women, seated in a circle, weaving charms from straw and bone. One smiles and explains they're midwives, and tonight they'll assist with a difficult birth. They carry herbs, sacred chants, and sharp knives just in case. Some whisper that midwives know more than priests about life and death, which makes them respected and feared. Nearby, a young man in a green tunic stands stiffly in front of a canvas. You think it's a portrait session until you see the subject. A chicken. It's for science, he says, without further explanation. Turns out, he's one of those rare scholars obsessed with anatomy, desperately trying to draw every muscle of the bird to better understand divine design. You ask if he's ever painted a human. He blushes. Not yet. Chickens don't sue. By evening, a hush falls over the town as a funeral procession begins. The body is carried on a bier, wrapped in linen, with herbs tucked into the folds to mask the smell. But the most striking thing? A choir of children sings as they walk, their voices eerily sweet in the fading light. You hear someone mutter, "May he sleep without dreams," and it strikes you. Here, even sleep is a mystery worth fearing. You retire to the tavern again, where a new bard is performing a tale of the knight who tried to outwit death by hiding in a barrel. Spoiler, it didn't work. The punchline earns a mix of laughter and awkward coughs. Death isn't far from anyone's mind, especially tonight, with a comet recently spotted in the sky, a sure sign of impending doom. Or tax increases. Either way, no one's happy. Before bed, you wander through the market and spot a stall selling charms made of animal bones carved into tiny faces. One is labeled for protection against lice. Another says, "Prevents heartbreak." A third simply reads, "Do not touch." You touch it anyway. The vendor gasps. Nothing happens. Why, ET, you climb into your loft once more. You realize the leech is now motionless. You tap the jar gently. No response. Maybe it was the altitude. Maybe it was divine punishment for skipping vespers. You bury it in the hay with a whisper of thanks. It might not have healed you, but at least it didn't escape. Your last thought before drifting off is the woman who claimed to hear angels in her fireplace. She said they spoke in Latin and smelled like honey. You want to believe her. You really do. Section 5. Fashion was a cry for help the fog thickened by morning, clinging to your skin like damp wool. You descend from your hayloft with creak and a sneeze, greeted by the sight of a man sharpening blades. Not swords, but razors. He's a town professional tonsurer, responsible for shaving monks' heads in the shape of a halo. He beckons you over with a grin that reveals more gum than teeth. Spiritual baldness, he says proudly, keeps the devil from nesting. You politely decline the holy haircut and make your way toward the monastery. Inside, the monks are preparing ink, grinding it from oak galls and mixing it with iron salts. The scriptorium smells like mildew and candle wax, and everywhere silence, except for the occasional sneeze or frustrated sigh, when a single ink blot ruins hours of work. You watch one monk carefully copy the book of Job, his calligraphy so precise it looks machine made. He tells you the Lord tests patience through spilled ink. You believe him. Outside, two boys are engaged in a heated argument over saints. One claims St. Lawrence was roasted alive and still cracked jokes while burning. The other insists he was simply overcooked, not joking. You step away before they drag you into it. Later, you learn that St. Lawrence's supposed final words were, "Turn me over, I'm done on this side." Historians still debate whether this actually happened, or if monks just had a morbid sense of humor. You wander into the herb garden, where an elderly nun teaches younger girls how to prepare salves. They grind nettles and wormwood, whispering prayers over each bowl. One girl adds a dollop of honey with such reverence you'd think it was liquid gold. When asked what the mixture treats, the nun replies, "Melancholy of the womb." You don't press further. From the cloister to the tavern square, word spreads a newly arrived relic, the preserved tongue of St. Apollonia, patroness of toothaches. People line up to kiss the glass case containing the shriveled organ, praying for relief from abscesses. You wonder the smell is holy too, or just very old garlic. By mid-morning, a curious commotion draws your attention. A theater troupe has set up shop. Their stage is little more than planks on barrels, but the audience gathers quickly. Today's play features death as a skeletal man in a jester's cap, chasing peasants while reciting riddles. One character is a merchant who sells fake relics, only to be dragged to hell mid-scene. The crowd gasps and cheers. It's both comedy and moral lesson, complete with fart jokes. Shakespeare hasn't been born yet, but this is the blueprint. After the show, you stroll past the washwomen by the river. They pound garments with wooden paddles and gossip freely. One claims her cousin saw a bishop levitate during prayer. Another says her neighbor's goat speaks Latin in its sleep. You're about to ask for details when someone points to the sky. A rainbow. The women cross themselves. Rainbows, after all, are messages, divine or ominous, depending on the week. The afternoon brings a round of public punishments. A man caught stealing candles is locked in the pillory, his hands and head protruding. Children throw turnip tops at him. A sign hangs from his neck. Thief of light. You overhear that he's also suspected of spreading rumors about the moon's tides. The court didn't know what that meant, so they added an extra hour to his sentence just in case. You duck into a nearby alehouse where the floor tilts and the air smells like pickled cabbage. A wandering friar is telling fortunes using bones and wax drips. He reads yours and declares, "You are not from here, but you will die like you are." Comforting. Evening falls, and with it, the start of the ember days, times of fasting and reflection. Meat is banned, dairy discouraged, and song frowned upon. But in the alleys, someone still plays a whistle tune that sounds suspiciously joyful. You hear it fade into the mist as you walk back to the square that on your way. You pass a group of beggars, singing hymns for coins. One holds a wooden hand carved from olive wood. He claims it cured him of gout. Another shows you a prayer written on parchment, so worn the ink's nearly vanished. She keeps it in a pouch made from squirrel skin. They're not saints, but in this town, close enough, the bells toll again. Somewhere in the distance, a cow lows mournfully. You climb back to your hayloft, bones aching from too much walking, head spinning from relics and rainbow prophecies. Below you, a cat yowls. Or maybe it's a ghost. Tonight, you dream of levitating bishops, sarcastic saints, and monks who duel with quills instead of swords, and somehow, it all feels perfectly normal now. Section 6 Headaches? Let's drill a hole in your skull. You wake in the pale blue hush before dawn, just as the first cock crows, and another promptly gets shushed by a groggy monk. The monastery bell hasn't rung yet, but life is already stirring. Someone knocks gently below your loft. It's a young girl with a basket. She offers you a hard roll and a boiled onion, the medieval version of a breakfast sandwich. You thank her with a nod and munch slowly, wondering what fresh absurdities today holds. The fog hasn't lifted, and neither has the town's collective superstition. You overhear whispers about a man who sneezed 3 times in a row yesterday. Now, sneezing once, totally fine. Twice, mild concern. But 3, clearly a harbinger of death. To be safe, the local healer wrapped him in a damp wool blanket and made him sleep beneath a crucifix. He's still sneezing. But now he's also itchy as you meander through the village. A bell rings, not a church bell this time, but the small, jangly one of the leper's bell. A thin figure in a hooded robe shuffles past, face half covered in cloth soaked with vinegar. People give a wide berth. The man mumbles a blessing. His robe bears a red cross. Lepers in this world aren't just sick, they're marked, banished to colonies outside city walls, visited only by the most pious or reckless. Some say touching one brings doom. Others swear a few lepers are secretly saints. Your path leads to a courtyard where a group of artisans are carving grotesques for the cathedral. These aren't just decorations, they're guardians, monsters with human faces and animal limbs meant to scare away evil. One sculptor is especially proud of his latest work, a bishop with bat wings and a fox's grin. You raise an eyebrow. Long story, he says, and goes back to chiseling. Further along, you pass a shop filled with candles shaped like body parts, legs, eyes, lungs. They're votives, meant to be offered at shrines in exchange for healing. Got a bum knee? Burn a wax kneecap. The smell is somewhere between beeswax and desperation. The shopkeeper insists one man lit a wax liver and was cured of melancholy. You nod, making a mental note to avoid liver based therapy. Midday brings a different kind of healing ritual, bloodletting. Again, you watch as a man lies on a bench while the barber surgeon slices into his arm with alarming nonchalance. Blood dribbles into a wooden bowl. The man winces but remains stoic. Too much yellow bile, he mutters. The surgeon agrees and adjusts his grip. This is medicine by color theory, and the palette is all our ED eye in the town square. Someone starts ringing the bell again, but this time it's not for sickness or death, it's for theater. The same troupe from earlier returns with new play, featuring St. George battling a dragon that looks suspiciously like a repurposed cow costume. The dragon loses, the crowd cheers, and the villain is dramatically dragged offstage while quoting Leviticus. 10 point for style. Later, a woman invites you to visit her garden, where she grows not food, but magical plants. Mandrake, wolfsbane, henbane, the kind of stuff that gets you burned at the stake in less tolerant towns. She assures you these are for healing, not hexes. She's a cunning woman, not a witch. But even she admits that distinction depends heavily on whether or not your patient recovers. If they live, I'm wise. If not, I'm firewood. As the sun dips low, the air grows chilly. You find yourself at a public well, watching people drop coins into it. Not for luck, but to pay respect to the water spirits. Yes, they believe the well is inhabited by unseen beings who can bless or curse those who draw from it. A girl tosses in a blue ribbon and whispers a wish. An old man spits for good measure. You just stare, uncertain which ritual is more effective. Evening brings a feast, though calling it that might be generous. Turnip stew, barley bread, and something that tastes like fermented radish. Still, it's warm, and people are laughing. A juggler performs with potatoes. A dog dances for scraps. You're handed a cup of mead and told to toast to St. Pippin, protector of cabbage. You do so, solemnly. Back in the loft, you wrap yourself tightly in your cloak. Somewhere nearby, a woman is giving birth. You hear the muffled screams, the urgent prayers, the sharp wail of life entering the world. The midwife hums a lullaby that sounds like a spell. Maybe it is. You close your eyes to the scent of burning herbs and the faint lull of someone whispering to a candle. And as sleep takes you, you wonder, if you sneeze 3 times a night, who will save you? Section 7. They believe women had teeth. Down there, the wind howls all night, and when you wake, it's still moaning to the rafters like a choir of very disappointed saints. You rub your eyes and realize your breath is visible in the morning air. Someone downstairs is already shouting about a missing chicken, which you suspect has less to do with poultry theft and more to do with someone's breakfast ambitions. Down in the square, a proclamation is being nailed to the church door with great theatricality. You shuffle closer and read it. A new sumptuary law has been passed. Again, these laws dictate who can wear what, and woe unto the peasant caught in velvet. Even colors are restricted. Purple, for instance, is for royalty only. A farmer wearing violet could be fined or even jailed. The goal? Maintain the natural order, which apparently includes suppressing any expression of fashion among the lower classes. You glance at your cloak, mud brown, of course. Safe, boring. You follow a group heading toward the nearby abbey, where today's sermon warns against the sin of curiosity. The priest thunders at those who poke into forbidden matters, like astronomy, alchemy, or unapproved saints, are opening the door to heresy. He singles out a local scribe who recently asked what stars are made of. The poor man is now required to copy psalms by hand for 40 days. Left-handed, with a dull quill. In the fields outside town, you stumble upon a strange ritual. A man walking backwards, dragging a sack of onions. You approach, and he explains he's performing a curse-lifting march. His neighbor gave him the evil eye after a bad bean harvest. The onions, a peace offering to the earth spirits. The walking backward, tradition. Logic is optional. Close to the woods, you find a woman making witch bottles. She fills small clay pots with nails, hair, and a pinch of urine, then seals them with wax. Buried beneath doorsteps, they're supposed to trap evil. You ask how many she's made. 74 this week, she says, and that's just the east end of town. Either this place is cursed or business is booming by mid-morning. Another spectacle unfolds. A pig on trial. Yes, again. This time for rooting through the priest's garden and destroying sacred leeks. The pig is marched before a panel of solemn men. A clerk reads the charges. The pig oinks. The town watches with the reverence usually reserved for coronations. Eventually, the animal is sentenced to exile. A boy leads it out with a rope. You're not sure where it's going, but it walks like it understands shame. You duck into a small chapel for respite. Inside, a group of pilgrims has arrived from the coast, each bearing a scallop shell, a symbol of St. James. They wear wide hats and dusty boots, their eyes hollow from travel. One man offers you a sliver of bone, claiming it's from St. Helena's toe. You politely decline, then watch as someone trades a loaf of bread for it. Relics are currency here, faith-backed and occasionally forged. Lunchtime brings another stew, this one laced with garlic and something green that defies identification. A woman across the table tells you about corpse candles, ghostly lights seen over graveyards. They're said to predict death. She swears she saw one float over her neighbor's field, and sure enough, the neighbor caught a cold. Coincidence? Probably. But no one here believes in those in the afternoon. A troop of flagellants returns, singing and whipping themselves in choreographed agony. This time, they chant in Latin, calling down mercy on the town. A child asks if it hurts. One of them winks and says, "Only when we stop." You're not sure whether to laugh or be alarmed. You find solace in a quiet corner of the apothecary, where a young woman grinds lavender into a calming draught. She speaks softly, explaining that some people here drink valerian wine before sleep to keep nightmares away. Others place rose petals beneath their pillows. One man insists he sleeps soundly with a frog under his mattress. No one argues with him. Evening falls, and the town prepares for a small festival. It's St. Gummerus Day, patron of woodcutters and difficult marriages. People light candles and carry wooden staffs, some carved with hearts, others with axes. A play is performed in his honor, featuring a saintly man who politely ignores his nagging wife and prays his way through dinner. It's clearly meant to be humorous. Whether it's also helpful remains unclear, As the fires burn low and the dancing slows, a storyteller begins to speak. She tells of a knight who wandered too far and found a village where no one ever died. At first, it seemed like paradise. But then the villagers began to whisper, not about life, but about the agony of never ending, how they envied those who aged, who left, who passed on. Be careful what you pray for, the storyteller finishes, especially if it involves gold, youth, or eternal stew. The crowd chuckles and disperses. You make your way back to your loft, stepping over puddles and bones, and one very drunk man asleep under a saint statue. Tonight, the wind is still, the bells are silent, but the dreams, those will be loud. Section 8. Drink gold or virgin pea to live forever you wake to the sound of bees. Not just buzzing, but humming, a low, almost musical drone echoing from the monastery garden. Curious, you follow the noise and discover a group of monks gathered around hives, praying aloud. One of them explains, quite seriously, that bees can sense sin. If you lie near a hive, they'll sting you. If you're pure of heart, they'll simply hum. Today, the hives are alive with song. Either the monks are doing something right, or the bees are just cold. Nearby, a woman kneels before a tree, not praying, listening. She says trees carry the voices of saints if you're patient enough. This one, an ancient yew, supposedly whispers warnings before storms. You press your ear against the bark. Nothing, just your own breath and the faint rustle of leaves. She shrugs. He speaks to me on Wednesdays. Back in town, a man shouts from atop a barrel, waving a scroll. He's selling indulgences again, but this time with a special deal. Forgiveness for 2 sins, plus a half-off voucher for a third. People rush forward, coins in hand. One woman clutches a pastry in her other hand and asks if gluttony is included. He assures her it is, as long as you chew with remorse. You duck into a workshop where parchment is being scraped, literally. Old manuscripts are being recycled, their ink scraped off a knife to make room for new text. Sometimes the ghosts of old words remain, like shadows on the page. You're told that saints' names tend to linger most stubbornly. They don't like to be erased. As you leave, you're nearly run over by a messenger on horseback. He shouts news of a comet spotted over the northern hills. Panic flutters through the crowd. Comets mean disaster, war, famine, or worse, taxes. One man immediately begins digging a hole to sleep in. Another says he saw his cow sneeze 3 times, and now he's sure the sky is falling. You step away slowly before you're asked for a shovel or ACOW at midday. The priest gives a sermon about bodily relics, specifically the dangers of fake ones. He warns that some miraculous bones being sold in nearby towns have turned out to be pig knuckles and fish spines. He holds up a genuine relic for comparison, a finger yellowed and curled like a baby carrot, encased in glass. St. Fidelis, he declares, protector of honesty. Someone coughs suspiciously. You wander to the edge of town and find a group of children playing a game called Catch the Plague. It involves one child tagging the others, then pretending to dive very dramatically. You watch one boy collapse into mud with great flair, tongue out, limbs twitching. The other children cheer. It's both horrifying and weirdly theatrical. Back at the tavern, today's special is miracle broth, which appears to be cabbage soup with floating almond. The barkeep swears it cured his cousin's stutter. The man next to you says it gave him the ability to see in the dark. You take a sip. It tastes mostly like overboiled hope. That evening, the village hosts a storytelling contest. The rules? Each tale must include a saint, an animal, and an embarrassing death. One man tells of St. Balthazar, who once tamed a weasel to attack heretics. Another shares a tale of a monk who laughed during Mass and was struck by lightning, then revived by a duck. The crowd roars with laughter. You think you might be the only one who finds this disturbing. Later, under the watch of the crescent moon, a local healer offers to read your face. She traces the lines on your forehead, your cheekbones, even your earlobes. Too much wind in your temperament, she says. Also, your nose is very judgmental. You know it solemnly. It does have a look dot on your way home. You notice a door with a mark on it, chalk, hastily drawn, a circle with a slash. Someone whispers that it means sickness inside. You keep walking, shoes suddenly heavier. At the well, an old man is talking to the water again. He claims it told him his daughter would marry a bishop or a goat. The water's accent is unclear, I in the loft. You wrap yourself in your cloak, now permanently infused with the scent of cabbage and candle smoke. A distant owl hoots. Someone coughs twice. You wait, breath held for a third. Nothing. You exhale. Sleep comes with visions of weasel saints and bees that hum judgment. And maybe, just maybe, that comet overhead is only there to remind the sky to stay interesting. Section 9. The witch drowning test the rain finally comes. You wake to its rhythm, a soft, steady drumming on the thatched roof above your head. It seeps into everything, your sleeves, your boots, even your dreams. Below, the village is transformed. Streets turn to soup, livestock sulk under makeshift shelters, and people walk hunched, as if the sky might fall if they stand too tall. But no one complains. Rain means relief. Fields drink deep, wells refill. And most importantly, it proves the saints haven't abandoned them. You head to the church, where an impromptu mass is being held in thanksgiving. The priest wears a damp robe and an expression that suggests both reverence and mild discomfort. The incense can't quite mask the scent of wet wool. Still, the choir sings boldly, their voices rising like steam in the cold air. Outside, children leap into puddles. One boy declares a particularly large one holy and demands a toll to cross. A passing monk steps into it deliberately, soaking his sandals and smiles. Blessed be the bold, he says. You duck into a candlemaker's shop, the warm glow inside a stark contrast to the gloom beyond. The maker is shaping beeswax into tiny figurines, saints mostly, but a few devils too, for balance. She offers you one shaped like Saint Dimphna, patron of mental afflictions. Good for strange dreams, she adds, squinting at you. You wonder if your night mumblings have become the talk of the village 18 midday. The streets are nearly empty, rain keeping most indoors. But the tavern is full. The stew today includes mystery meat, which the cook assures is not rat this time. You nod, unconvinced, and focus on your bread instead. The storyteller sits by the hearth, reciting a new tale of a knight who tried to bribe death with cheese. It almost worked, until death developed a lactose intolerance. The room erupts in laughter. Even the dog by the door gives a sleepy huff of amusement. Later, you follow a group to the village hall for a peculiar ceremony. The rain ledger, an enormous book, bound in leather and mildew, is brought out and opened with ceremony. In it, the scribe records the first rain after every dry spell, along with omens observed. Today's entry reads, rain began at third bell. Cow lowed twice. No lightning. Smell of onions in the air. Good sign. You're not sure what any of it means, but no one questions it. The ledger is sacred, as the afternoon wanes. You wander toward the edge of the woods, drawn by rumors of a wise man who lives there. He said to talk to birds, predict illness from leaf patterns, and once cured a merchant's gout with nothing but moss and sarcasm. You find his hut, low, moss-covered, and smoking faintly. He welcomes you with a grunt and a cup of something hot and murky. His shelves are lined with jars, feathers, teeth, bones, and one particularly suspicious pickle. He asks to see your palms, then peers at them like a road map. Too much thinking, he says, and your dreams smell of old coins. You don't ask what that means. You just sip your tea and nod. Before you leave, he gives you a charm, a braided strand of hair with a small stone tied at the end. For protection, he mutters, or for conversation, depending on who asks. Back in town, the rain has eased to a drizzle. Lanterns glow softly in the mist. A woman lights a small fire and begins reading fortunes from melted candle wax. She sees movement, change, and something that looks suspiciously like a goat. You thank her, unsure if she's seen your future or your lunch. That night, the tavern is quiet. Even the bard has taken the evening off. You sit by the window, watching droplets race down the glass. In the corner, a couple holds hands and prays, not to avoid hardship, but to survive it together. You sip your ale and think that's the most practical prayer you've heard all week dot up in your loft. The air smells like damp hay and beeswax. The charm from the wise man rests under your pillow. The candle shaped like St. Dymphna flickers beside you, and as the rain resumes soft and steady, you sleep, dreaming not of saints or curses, but of warm bread and silence. Section 10. Cucumbers were dangerous the morning after rain smells like damp stone and churned up earth. You wake to find the village transformed once again. Mud tracks lead everywhere. Chickens look mildly betrayed, and even the cat seems offended by the moisture. But people move with purpose. Today is a feast day. Not a holy one, at least not officially, but a local one dedicated to St. Ildegard of the Socks. According to local legend, St. Ildegard once prevented a famine by knitting an enormous pair of socks that caught falling stars and turned them into grain. There's no record of this in official doctrine, of course, but the villagers love her. Her statue, barefoot and smiling, stands in the square, adorned with offerings of yarn, buttons, and very small shoes. You wander through the market as preparations begin. Bread is baked into whimsical shapes stars, sheep, and one disturbing attempt at a bishop. Children run with streamers, one of them dressed head to toe in mismatched socks. No one questions it. This is tradition at the village edge. An old man demonstrates sock divination. He pulls pears from a basket and reads fortunes based on their holes. One with a tear at the toe means travel. A heel hole means betrayal. You hand him one at random. He stares solemnly. Ah, he says, a romantic misunderstanding in mild foot odor. You nod. That tracks. Mid-morning brings a curious spectacle. The annual blessing of the laundry. Everyone brings their cleanest or least dirty linens to the churchyard, where the priest sprinkles holy water and recites a psalm about purity. A woman next to you whispers, "It's mostly for show. My husband's undershirts are beyond saving." You duck away and find refuge near the apothecary, who's brewing a festive tonic today. It smells like rosemary and regret. She offers a sip. You taste iron mint and what might be vinegar. Good for memory, she says. And hiccups. You hiccup instantly. The main event is a pageant, held on the green. A play reenacts St. Ildegard's miracle, starring a local girl in sock armor, facing down famine, played by a man in a straw cape. The sock net is flung. Stars are caught, glitter thrown from the roof, and bread rains from the ceiling. Small loaves launch with a slingshot. One hits a monk in the head. He calls it divine intervention. The crowd roars not out of reverence but sheer delight. Faith and farce, woven tightly together. Later, a debate erupts near the well, whether socks should be hung with toes up or heels out. A traveling weaver insists the latter prevents evil spirits from hiding in the toe. A local matron argues the former invites prosperity. The priest, overhearing, offers a compromise. Fold them. Everyone ignores him. Lunch is served in the square, bean pies, honeyed carrots, and mysterious dish known only as Saint Stew. No one can name its ingredients, but it's hearty and suspiciously green. A man next to you claims it cured his cousin's fear of frogs. You don't ask follow-ups. The mood shifts subtly by afternoon. A small procession begins, led by a silent woman with ash on her forehead. She's mourning a child lost the previous year. People join her, carrying candles. This moment, woven into the day of celebration, feels fragile and deeply human. You follow quietly as they circle the square, then disperse like mist. No speeches, just presence. Evening returns a joy. Musicians take up fiddles and drums. Dancers spin in circles, some barefoot, others in festive woolen socks dyed with onion skin and beetroot. One man leaps so enthusiastically he splits his seams. The crowd applauds wildly. You slip away before the mead gets too strong. At the chapel, a single candle burns by the statue of St. Ildegard. You kneel, not to pray, but to rest. The wax drips steadily, soft and slow. Back in your loft, you find a small woven sock left by your bed. Inside it, a coin, a seed, and a sprig of thyme. A local charm. You don't know who left it, but you place it under your pillow, tuck yourself in, and exhale. That night, you dream of sock-shaped constellations and bread that falls like snow. Somewhere in the stars, St. Ildegard smiles barefoot and radiant. Section 11. They slept in 2 shifts, the bells are late. You stir in your loft, blinking at the soft dawn light and waiting for the usual clang of metal on metal, but it doesn't come. Instead, there's a hush, the kind of quiet that feels intentional. Below, The village moves slower, voices hushed, footsteps careful. Something is off. You climb down and step into the street. There's a notice nailed to the well, a time of stillness, by order of the prior. No festivals, no singing, no meat. The cause? A prophetic dream had by Brother Willibald, who saw a raven eat the moon and spit bones into the sea. The townsfolk aren't entirely sure what it means, but they're erring on the side of divine dread. Shops are shuttered. Bread is baked without herbs. Even the cat seems unusually solemn. You head to the monastery, where the monks move in silence, communicating with nods and finger pointing. A young novice hands you a scroll with the rules of the day. Mainly, don't laugh, don't dance, and don't eat anything that bleeds. You nod solemnly, though your stomach growls in rebellion. Outside the scriptorium, a monk is painting an illustration of Brother Willibald's dream. The raven is enormous, its beak open, the moon half swallowed. The bones, for some reason, are shaped like fish. You ask about the meaning. He sighs. Metaphor, probably, or dinner regret. As the sun rises higher, the mood doesn't lift. Even the sheep in the pasture seem contemplative. A woman sits at the village edge spinning wool in complete silence. She mouths prayers with every turn of the spindle. You sit nearby, and for a while, the world shrinks to rhythm and breath and wool. But not everyone is convinced by the prophecy in a shadowed alley. You meet a group of skeptics gathered around a barrel of weak ale. One snorts. Ravens eat everything. Dreams are just the mind's leftovers. Another counters. But the moon did look funny last night. They argue in whispers. Eventually, they toast anyway. Quietly. Midday brings a strange sight. A ritual walk around the fields, led by the priest holding a single black feather. The procession moves slowly, stopping at every boundary marker to murmur a short chant. Feather, moon, bone, and sea. Keep all pestilence from thee. It's not from scripture, but it rhymes, and that's often enough. You find yourself pulled into the march, your steps matching the rhythm. The wind picks up as you circle the third field, and a rooster crows once, then goes eerily quiet. Even the chickens are on edge. Back in town, a scholar lectures two wide-eyed children about eclipses and how the moon cannot, in fact, be eaten by birds. They listen politely. Then one says, "But what if it's a magic bird?" The scholar sighs in defeat. A.T. the apothecary. A new tonic is on offer. Raven's Peace, a mix of valerian, plum, and something vaguely fishy. Supposedly it calms dreams. You sip a bit and feel your tongue go slightly numb. Effective? Maybe. Concerning? Absolutely as dusk falls. The bells finally ring, but just once a signal that the day of silence is ending, that a candlelit vigil begins in the chapel. People sit quietly, the only sounds a drip of wax and the occasional creak of wood. The priest stands and speaks softly. Even dreams pass. Even omens fade. But bread and kindness remain. Then he passes around a loaf. Still warm, still plain, but share without fear. You return to your loft, full not of mead or stew, but stillness. The feathered charm hangs by your bed, gifted by a child during the vigil. "In case the raven comes for real," she said and skipped away. "Tonight, you dream of birds that sing lullabies and moons that grow wings. And for the first time in days, your sleep is deep and untroubled. Section 12, toothache? Burn a mouse and rub the ashes on your gums. The dream lingers. You wake with a taste of feathers on your tongue and a whisper in your ear that might have been your own breath or something older. The village is already stirring, shaken free of yesterday's silence. Bells ring again, lively and bright, as if making up for lost time. You pull on your cloak and step into the sun. Today feels lighter. A market day, perhaps, not official but impromptu. Stalls pop up like mushrooms after rain. Baskets of wilted herbs, loaves with too many seeds, jars of spring jam that look suspiciously fermented. One boy sells buttons carved from bone, each painted with tiny faces. You ask if they're decorative. He shrugs. Some of them whisper if you sew them on right. At the edge of the square, a man in a pointed hat hawks books. Not just scripture, but stories, handwritten, smudged, stitched at the spine with twine. Titles include The Saint Who Turned into a Tree and The Worm Who Became a Bishop. You pick one up. It smells like mildew and ink and something strangely sweet. He offers you a deal. Two stories for one favor. You ask what kind of favor. He grins. I'll let you know. You back away slowly. By midday, the energy shifts again. A commotion near the tannery. Someone claims to have found a rock shaped exactly like the Virgin Mary's face. A small crowd gathers. Some kneel. One woman places a daisy at its base. Another mutters it looks more like a fish. The debate grows heated until a dog knocks it over, and the moment dissolves into laughter and mild blasphemy. Near the well, a traveling juggler performs for coins. He juggles apples, then fire, then four half melted candles, and a live frog. The frog escapes mid act. Panic ensues. The juggler bows deeply. Miracles are messy, he declares. You wander toward the fields and find something unexpected, a shrine built entirely of shoes. Old, muddy, mismatched. Some are nailed to a tree. Others dangle from branches like fruit. A woman tends a shrine, adding a fresh sandal. She explains it's for St. Crispin, patron of cobblers and those who walk far without complaint. He understands blisters. She says reverently on your way back. You pass the leper's lane, where a small chapel stands half sunk into the earth. Its door is low, its bell cracked, but the air around it feels thick with memory. A girl leaves a bowl of soup on the step, knocks twice, and runs. You wait. A figure appears, hooded and slow, and lifts the bowl. No words are exchanged. You look away. Later, the sky darkens, not with storm, but with the approach of an eclipse. Whispers spread fast. Children tug at sleeves. Adults glance skyward, unsure whether pray or run. One monk throws a blanket over a statue just in case. As the light dims, the village holds its breath. Shadows stretch. Birds fall silent. The sun shrinks to a crescent, then a thin silver grin. A woman cries. A man laughs too loudly. The air hums. And then light returns, slowly, reluctantly. The world exhales. Afterwards, no one speaks of it directly. They return to chores, meals, and gossip, but with softer voices, as if they saw something they can't quite name. Evening brings calm. The tavern fills with warmth and stew, and a new song about the sky that blinked. It's catchy, a little off key, perfect. You sitting near the hearth, where an old woman tells you of a place where the moon sometimes lands at a field of rest, and anyone who touches it turns into a dandelion. Don't laugh, she warns. That's what happened to my brother. Back in your loft, you find one of the storybooks tucked into your pack. The worm who became a bishop. No note, no explanation. You smile, then glance around. No sign of the man with the pointed hat. You light your candle, nestle under your blanket, and listen to the wind tickling the thatch. Tonight, your dreams are crowded with dandelions, shoes, and trees, and books that hum when you turn the page. And somewhere just beyond sleep, a worm is giving a sermon to stars. Section 13. Skull water was a popular tonic dawn seeps into the thatch like a sigh. Today smells of baked clay in time. And for once, your boots feel dry when you slip them on. Below, the village buzzes, not in panic or mourning, but anticipation. It's the day of the trial games. You descend into the street and see it already transforming. Rope barriers are strung. Tables moved into odd arrangements. Chalk marks drawn across the square. This isn't a court of law, nor a festival. It's somewhere between, a strange ritual where villagers prove themselves not guilty of suspicion or sin through games. Your first stop is a truth dunk, a wooden barrel filled with icy water, a seat dangling above it by fraying rope. A young man accused of stealing a prayer candle prepares to sit. If he can recite Psalm 23 without trembling before the dunk, he's innocent. If he stammers, splash, he misses a word. The crowd gasps. Down he goes, next the feather walk. A suspected gossip must walk barefoot across a path of goose feathers, without displacing a single one. An impossible task, which is sort of the point. You watch as a woman tiptoes, arms outstretched. A breeze shifts a feather. She curses under her breath. The crowd tuts. You find a vendor nearby selling innocence tokens, small stones painted with eyes. Keeps you safe during the games, she says. Or at least gives you something to hold when they accuse you of loving cheese too much. You buy one, just in case. The strangest event is the cloak of candor, a large, itchy cloak stitched from dozens of fabric scraps is thrown over someone's shoulders while they're asked a series of increasingly absurd questions. If they answer without laughing, they're deemed truthful. One man insists deadpan that his goat can sing hymns in Latin. The judges nod, impressed by noon. The games pause for the Feast of Shadows. It's less a meal and more a symbolic nibble. Black bread, smoked salt, and water served in obsidian cups. It's meant to remind villagers that truth often hides in shadow, and shadows can stretch or shrink, depending on the light. Deep stuff. For stale bread, you sit with a group of older women weaving baskets from rushes. One hums a tune she says was taught to her by a spirit in her garden. Another claims she once won her innocence by swallowing a cherry stone and predicting the weather. Rain by Wednesday, she adds. You glance up. The sky is perfectly clear. In the afternoon, the final game begins. The silent seat. A suspected liar must sit in total silence while the crowd throws questions, insults, and temptations. A boy no older than 10 sits, eyes wide. Someone offers him a cake. Someone else calls him a toad. He says nothing. A minute passes. Then two. When he finally blinks and smiles, the crowd erupts in cheers. He wins. A coin, a loaf of bread, and most importantly, restored honor to as the sun sets. The games end with procession. Everyone walks to the square carrying something symbolic. Feathers, candles, bits of bread, or tiny dolls dressed like judges. They chant simple phrase, truth like fire burns and clears. A bit dramatic, but it fits the mood. That night, the tavern is full of laughter. People retell their trials, exaggerate their stumbles, and toast the boy who sat stiller than a stone. Someone sings a ballad about the cloak of candor. Someone else sneezes and loudly proclaims, I am not guilty of cheese love. Everyone cheers. Back in your loft, your token, painted stone, now warm from your pocket, rests on the windowsill. Outside, the moon is almost full, hanging like a watchful eye. You fall asleep easily, lulled by memory and mirth, and dream of a world where justice is measured in feathers, laughter, and very itchy cloaks. Section 14. Church band sex on most days of the year. The morning sun breaks bold and clear, like it has something to prove. You wake to the smell of toasted barley and wood smoke, and the distant sound of someone yelling about milk curses. Curious, as always, you wander toward the noise. A farmer stands in the square, clutching a cracked jug and pointing accusingly at a cow. Not his cow, mind you, his neighbor's. The charge? His own cow's milk has gone sour for 3 days straight, and the only explanation, obviously, is witchcraft. A trial is demanded. You follow the procession, farmer, cow, accused neighbor, and 3 half-interested onlookers, to the edge of town where the truth trough is set up. The accused must lead the cow in a circle while reciting the pater noster backward. If the cow lies down or defecates, guilt is confirmed. You watch, barely blinking. The cow does nothing. Verdict, unclear. The priest declares the matter unresolved, but blesses both cows just in case. Everyone returns to their porridge. Back in the village, a new stall has appeared. A scent interpreter. A heavy-set man with a nose like a hawk and fingers stained blue from juniper ink. He sniffs people and offers prophetic insights. One woman is told her future smells like cinnamon and regret. Another like wet wool and ambition. You ask for yours. He sniffs, pauses, and says, rain, secrets, and fresh bread. You'll be fine. By mid-morning, a crowd gathers near the chapel for the unveiling of a new mural. Painted in egg tempera on rough plaster, it depicts the great misunderstanding of 1272, a local legend wherein a group of monks accidentally excommunicated chicken. The scene is gloriously chaotic. Feathers flying, scrolls burning, one monk flee with his robes on fire. The Real chicken involved is supposedly buried nearby, honored with a tiny headstone. As you admire the artwork, a child offers you a pebble, solemnly declaring it a prayer stone. You turn it over. One side is smooth, the other etched with something that might be a fish or maybe a spoon. You nod, pocket it, and thank the tiny theologian. You make your way to the infirmary next, drawn by the scent of cloves and vinegar. Today's remedies are laid out like a banquet for the ill. Dried rose petals for sorrow, ground oyster shells for cowardice, and leech tonic for those suffering immoderate thoughts. One patient swears by boiled eel spine tea for his hiccups. Another insists licking a bishop's shadow cured her gout. The nun overseeing it all shrugs and says, "Faith helps." Later, you join a gathering around the fire pit for story hour. Except today's stories are true horrors. Each tale worse than the last, and all allegedly real. A man who bathed 3 times in a week and fell ill. A woman who wore red on a feast day and was chased by bees. A child who questioned the moon's loyalty and lost all their teeth. The listeners gasp, cross themselves, or giggle nervously. One old man mutters, "I once saw a squirrel read a psalm. Never trusted trees again." In the quiet after the laughter fades, a man recites from memory a prayer not found in any book. It speaks of patience, salt, and the sacred silence between two goat bleats. Everyone listens closely. No one asks for its origin. Sometimes a mystery is best left wrapped in linen and humility as twilight falls. The baker hands out moon loaves, small, round bread scored with smiling faces. They're meant to invite good dreams and ward off lunar mischief. You chew yours slowly, savoring the anise and honey. You walk past the chapel one last time and notice someone has left a tiny sock at the foot of the chicken's headstone. A tribute, maybe, or a joke. Either way, you smile. Back in your loft, the wind picks up. The prayer stone in your pocket feels warm. The cow trial, the scent oracle, the haunted hiccups, all blur into the comforting absurdity of this place. You close your eyes. Tonight, your dreams are full of murals that move, chickens that whisper, and shadows that heal when no one is looking. Section 15. Animals were put on trial the last morning come softly. You stir beneath your blanket of straw and wool. The light outside a tender gold, the kind that warms stone walls and softens even the hardest hay mattress. Below, the village hums with the quiet cadence of ordinary life. No festivals, no trials, no omens, just the steady rhythm of being. Today is Market Peace Day, a tradition older than memory. No haggling, no shouting, no punishments. Just a shared agreement to be decent. For 24 hours, at least, you step into the square and feel the difference immediately. People speak in murmurs, not mutters. Even the chickens strut with dignity, at the center. A large table has been laid out not with goods for sale, but things to give. Bread wrapped in linen, carved spoons, baskets of dried herbs. Take what you need, someone says gently. Leave what you can. You offer your last heel of cheese and walk away with a small bottle of lavender oil and a folded note that simply reads, "You matter more than you know." Across the square, two boys are building a miniature cathedral out of pebbles and old bones. One says it's for ants to worship in. The other claims it's bait for saintly beetles. You don't question either logic at the chapel. The doors are open wide, sunlight pouring in through colored glass. The priest kneels alone before the altar, but doesn't turn as you pass. A monk nearby is polishing the stone floor with a rag, in a kind of reverence that feels contagious. You lower your voice, even in thought. You join a group heading toward the fields. It's not a procession, not a pilgrimage, just neighbors walking. Some carry baskets, others flowers. A woman hums a tune with no words. Someone laughs, quietly. A child asks if clouds ever get tired of floating. No one has an answer, and that feels fine. Near the stream, you find a tree with ribbons tied to its branches. Wishes, hopes, regrets. One is scribbled on a fish scale, another stitched into linen. You don't leave a ribbon, but you rest your hand on the bark and feel the age there, deep and unbothered. You eat lunch with strangers who become familiar. A man shares pickled turnip. A girl offers an egg wrapped in moss. You trade a story for a figure. Everyone chews slowly. No one hurries. It's as if time itself has decided to pause and breathe. In the afternoon, a group sits by the old mill, watching the wheel turn lazily in the sun. A storyteller begins, not with saints or trials, but with a tale about a woman who planted stars like seeds, and one night they bloomed. No morals, no warnings, just beauty. The wind carries the scent of rosemary and old parchment. A bee lands on your sleeve and stays, just long enough to remind you of something you can't quite name. At sunset. Bells ring, but not for mass. They ring for stillness, for remembering. For letting go, you stand at the edge of the village and look back. The rooftops aglow, smoke curling in lazy spirals, voices fading into lullabies and soft laughter. Nothing spectacular happens. And somehow, that is the miracle. You climb to your loft for the last time. The straw whispers as you settle in. Your cloak smells like 100 odd days. The chicken's headstone, the feathered charms, the candle wax saints, they blur into one long, strange, tender dream. You close your eyes to the sound of distant bells and wings you cannot see, and just before sleep takes you, you hear it. Not a whisper, not a prayer, just a quiet exhale of a world that, for all its madness, always meant well. The night deepens, your breathing slows, each inhale softened by straw scented air and memory. Around you, the world doesn't fade, it hushes. The bells are quiet now, the chicken's asleep. Even the wind has slipped into dreams. You rest in the hush between centuries, in the folds of a time too strange to be real and too human not to be. You walk through madness and miracles, through goat trials, whispering wells, bread shaped saints, and a lingering scent of candle smoke and old stew. And somehow, none of it felt foreign. None of it felt wronged. I in this village of yours, borrowed, built from cobblestone logic and moon fed folklore. Nothing was perfect, but everything was sincere. Even the lies were wrapped in hope. Even the superstitions tasted of kindness. And now all of it, feathered tokens, leech jars, mural chickens, eclipsed dreams, folds itself around you like a quilt stitched from memory. There is no lesson to carry, no moral to decipher, just a comfort that people, wherever and whenever they are, always find ways to live with each other. With humor, with oddity, with love. Your eyes grow heavier, your thoughts drift slower. Outside, a single candle flickers behind a shutter, and then nothing but stillness. Sleep well, time traveler, you've earned your rest.